Welcome to part 2 with Whitey Reid, my former childhood best friend who I haven't really spoken with in 30 years. In episode 1, we talked about a lot of different things from his experiences, what he's most proud of. Definitely check it out.
What makes you proud? Stay positive when the wind is in your face. Treat people with respect.
But this is a new idea that I have for this part 2. And that is, we have had a ton of interactions with famous folks. You mentioned it in part 1, where you interacted with Jamal Crawford, Karl Anthony Towns, Mike Breen, New York Knicks contingent. But I want to kind of alternate some stories of our famous interactions and then end on a couple of shared experiences that we had 30 years or so ago. So do you want to start? What, other than the one that you told in part 1, what famous interaction sticks out with you?
Okay, yeah. So we touched on it in part 1 about sort of my silver spoon upbringing.
Oh, right. This episode is with Ricky Schroeder.
Well, yeah, that's exactly who I was thinking of. And it's funny, when I was little and 10 years old, people used to mistake
You
me
did
for
look like him, probably.
Ricky
Yeah.
Schroeder. Yeah. So, I should have used that more to my advantage. I don't know. What was my 10-year-old self thinking there? So my mom and stepfather, they ended up moving to Nashville. I don't know if you knew that.
Yep.
Yeah. So after I went to Vanderbilt, I did my freshman year, and then like sophomore year, they moved down there, and they were there for several years in Nashville. And so my mom would throw these big like galas. A lot of just sort of who's who of Nashville would come. And my mom had sort of been like she was a homemaker, and she was very good throughout her life with decorating and just like, so at some point, like, I don't know when it was, she was basically friends with Martha Stewart. And so Martha Stewart came to this big gala that we had at my mom and stepfather's house in Nashville. And
that was pre-prison Martha Stewart. Yes.
So I'm like 21 or something. I'm at Vanderbilt still, and she's like in her 50s, I think. And so the dinner party's like, big tent, just, waiters everywhere. It was just over the top, and politicians were there, and just like, just really was like a who's who of Nashville. So I'm seated at a table, and she basically, she just comes and sits down next to me. And this is going to really just sound very, geez. Okay, I'm just going to spit it out, right? So she talks and talks and talks to me. To this day, I can't really remember what she was talking about. And like, back then too, we should say, Martha Stewart at age 50 or however old she wasn't as global as she is now. So it didn't blow my mind that Martha Stewart was just talking my head off. So she then like gives me a business card with like her information on it. So I don't know. I'm still not really thinking anything of it. The party's over. Like, our family kind of is congregated in like the kitchen living room area. Everybody's left. And like basically my whole family comes in, like sisters and my mom. And they tell me Martha Stewart was hitting on me the whole night. And like, it hadn't even registered that she was. Because, when you're 21 and you're talking to someone 30 years older than you or whatever, I don't know. It didn't register to me that she was hitting on me, but apparently everybody at the party thought that she was hitting on me. And so like, I'm like, really? As I'm talking to my family, and I'm like, she gave me this card too. And like, my mom snatches the card out of my hand, and rips it up into 1,000 pieces. And I can't remember her exact words, but she was something like, "Oh, that's disgusting," or something like that. And so, yeah, that's my
Wow.
celebrity encounter. If Martha, if you're watching, I don't know what happened really. I'm just going on what siblings and my mom told me. So
You would have called, but you didn't have the number anymore.
right, yeah, exactly.
That is amazing. And so, one, I grew up in the town where she lives, Westport, Connecticut. So that's where she's from. Two, this is the second one of these podcasts that there's a story about Martha Stewart, ironically. I did one, Ron Severdia, who I used to work with. He was in like Mumbai and sat down next to Martha Stewart. So it's, yeah, the only person I think that's mentioned twice. But that's a very tough story to top. As you were talking through it, I didn't know actually where it was going to end. And I'm thinking, I probably have to have a different story now than what I was thinking. But I'll tell mine that I have. I actually have two. One is very lame, and the other one I think is a funny story. One, we were just at the mall like 2 weeks ago, and I was on the phone. I was with my wife, and Thomas Davis, the former linebacker for the Carolina Panthers, walks by. And like, I only will say something. I never ask for autographs. Like, I hate that unless it's that setting that you're specifically supposed to get an autograph. And I put down the phone. It was like a business call. I put down the phone. I'm like, Thomas Davis. I'm like, hello, sir. And he's like, okay. And then I was like, that was pretty lame. Bye. But my interesting one, we were at a movie theater here close to us. And I was with my son. This was maybe, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. And we were waiting in line for popcorn. And in front of us, there was a dad and a daughter. And the daughter had on the back of her jersey, it said Murrell, Murrell. And I go, Coop. I was like, Coop, just so you know, that was my favorite player on the Jets growing up. He was a running back for the Jets in the mid 90s, I think.
Is it Adrian?
Adrian Morel, and he turns around. He turns around. He goes, "Hey, I'm Adrian." I'm like, "What?"
Wow.
Yeah. So it was interesting from that perspective. So yeah, the one that I was going to try to top you on, but it was nowhere near, was my mom did a party in New York City when we were younger, and Andy Warhol was there, and so I got to meet him, and that was from my recollection, kind of a weird encounter and such. So.
Wow.
But that was in New York City too. So, yeah.
What do you remember? What do you remember about that interaction? Like, I mean, such an influential, icon.
Yeah. So it was like an art show, and I think he was, probably exhibiting or something. And my mom, who was like great at just like barging our way in and having conversations with people, she's like, "Hey, this is Andy," and I was probably like 7 or 8 or 9 or something at the time. So like, at the time, I probably had no clue, who that was or whatever. But I don't have many memories from my childhood, but I remember like his stature, and all I remember him saying was "hello." Like, it was like very like dry and like very awkward, right? Because most of those artists are, probably awkward in general, and they're paid to be there, type of thing. And then I think we just turned around and like, went into the corner in the area. But yeah, obviously, I'm pretty sure that was before he died. Maybe he had already died. No, I think he was alive. So yeah, lots of random interactions like that for sure. But we have a couple that I started to recall in prepping for this that I think were interesting shared interactions. The first, or shared memories. The first was when you brought me down to Nashville I went to Belmont, and we were doing your TV show, Whitey's World, for Vanderbilt. And we would get press passes for a bunch of different activities or games. And we attended basically every Vanderbilt home game in, the 1994 season, the football team. We started to go to some basketball events and things like that. But we had these press passes. So we'd be on the field and we'd get access. And we realized that, Michael Jordan, who was playing for the Birmingham Barons baseball team at the time, he was going to be in Chattanooga playing the Chattanooga Lookouts. And we're like, hey, let's try to get some tickets or press passes. And I think we actually got press passes somehow. And we made our way down to the game, and we saw Jordan play. And it was, I think halfway through his his season in Double A. But that was an interesting interaction above and beyond running across Craig Seager in the stands and
Oh, yeah.
other things like that. But I don't know what your version of that story is from, seeing him play
Yeah.
baseball. So
Yeah, that Whitey's World. Basically, we figured out, if you recall, you put something on that Whitey's World stationery and fax it to somebody and just make it a really formal request. They don't know that it's like a college TV station or what it is. The only thing we ever got rejected for, I remember we tried to go to the Super Bowl. I don't know if you remember that. We sent in a credential request for the Super Bowl. Granted, we're like on the sidelines with like this little camcorder, like filming stuff.
I mean, it's literally the size of your hand that you have up now. So
Yeah, with our like T-shirts that say Whitey's World and all this stuff, and like our hats
our
on
backwards Buccaneers hat.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
yes.
but with the Jordan interaction, I remember the Craig Sager one vividly, because the thing I remember most was, I was like, that guy's wasted. Like he was drinking like, I don't know. He put his arms around us, and like you could tell that he was in a very happy place.
Yeah, I remember him holding a drink and a hot dog, but I don't remember the other part of him, being wasted and all that stuff. But it's always interesting, like the dual sides to the stories, So, and then so many great stories from that. The other one was the New York Knicks came into town for preseason playing the San Antonio Spurs, and they played at, what's Vanderbilt's arena's name?
Memorial Gymnasium.
Memorial Gymnasium, and it looks as old as it sounds. I don't know if they've updated it since. But they came into town. We got press passes somehow for that, and it was a preseason game. And we got into the shoot around, which usually occurs like early afternoon, I guess. And then we had press passes to the game. Again, you painted the picture. We were walking around with our camcorder. I think the microphone was bigger than the camcorder that I'm sitting there holding. And we would talk to the, different players. And that was when David Robinson, Charles Oakley, Patrick Ewing, it was some huge stars that were in that game.
Dennis Rodman was on the Spurs. And
Dennis Rodman.
Doc Rivers was on the Knicks. He was the point guard back then. And Pat Riley was the coach at the time. And that's actually one of my memories I'll always remember, is after the game, after this preseason game, I just was walking all around, like inside the locker room. There was just it was like the Wild West. We were just doing whatever we wanted. And there's Pat Riley in the bathroom area, and he's just drinking a beer right out of the can. I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, all right.
Yeah, those are the days that there's smoke on the field at baseball games, and just drink in the locker room. Now there's all this health stuff going on.
Yeah.
But so we ended up playing a joke. We would call up the hotel and we played a joke on them while they were on different players. And we played one on the head athletic trainer. His name was Mike Saunders. And we won't go into the joke, but we thought it was pretty funny. Anyhow, the joke was basically he charged too many things to his room, and we're supposed to deliver a bill to him. So we get to the shoot around before the game, and we handed him this fake bill, and apparently he had told the team that either someone was playing a joke on him or this scenario happened. And we handed him the bill, and all I remember was every single player on the Knicks dying laughing, rolling on the floor, pointing at him, running around. And they were obviously they thought the guy was funny, and he was a really goofy guy, and they thought it was the greatest thing ever for my brain. I don't know if you remember other parts of that story, but it was a fun interaction for sure.
Yes, and my other memory is he was just a very kind person. He could take a joke. He was just a very likable, nice guy.
Yeah, he was a good guy. I ended up working with him a few years later, kind of, and I replayed the bill thing, and it was 7-8 years later, and he's like, "That was you." It was really a funny interaction. The last thing I think in this, and I do want to kind of revisit a little bit more of the general Whitey's World, because I think that we had some good things going there. And I think you've said it, that we're a little bit before our time. But I think that, so we would play these practical jokes on professional athletes. We'd somehow find them. Do you remember when we called up? It was draft night, the night before the draft of the year that Marvin Jones, Drew Bledsoe, and somebody else came out. Like, it was big name players at the time. So they would always stay at the Marriott Marquis in New York City, because that's where they would do the draft. And we ended up getting through to Drew Bledsoe and to Marvin Jones, the first two picks, I think they were in the draft, the Patriots and the Jets, ironically. And we like had this interaction. We kind of played, a joke, and we were like passed around to his whole family. I don't know if you remember that whole scenario.
I actually don't remember any of this, but that sounds fantastic. That's like in our Hall of Fame, this anecdote. Yet I'm interested to hear more.
Yeah. So I think that was like after we were rejected, like Super Bowl or whatever. And we tried actually like championship games. I think we tried different things. So we were on the phone with Drew Bledsoe and his family, and there wasn't like a great practical joke necessarily. Right. And, but it was like interesting because it was like it was right before the draft. I don't think we were dumb enough to try to be a caller during the draft. Like, hey, you were drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think that we were smart enough not to do that. So anyhow, that was it was interesting that we're able to get through. I doubt that you can get through to any of the players anymore. So anyhow, so that was that story. Fast forward like 2 years ago, I was doing this event where it's this company called Purple Cork would send wine to potential customers, and like you would get on the phone, you'd have a chat, and it was over wine and cheese. So we signed up for the Drew Bledsoe event, and he has his own winery with like his childhood friend and everything. So I was like, I'll do this one for the company. So we get on, and they're like, ask questions and all that stuff. I'm like, Drew, do you remember getting a call draft night and someone playing a joke on you? He's like, I talk about that all the time because it was the most random thing. And I was like, yeah, that was me. And then I literally didn't say anything else for the rest of the time.
Oh my goodness, that is great.
Yeah. Great bookend stories. I was like, I didn't know where I was going with that. His buddy wanted to know more, but I was like, I don't want to be too embarrassing and take over the whole thing. But it was interesting bookend, 30 years later, basically. So
it's funny the ones that you remember and the ones you don't, because like I don't know why I didn't remember those ones, but like I remember like Darius Kasparaitis, like this like Russian hockey player on maybe the Islanders who we pranked called and did this whole bit where we pretended to be his teammate Scotty LeChance, I think was his teammate. And we had this whole thing. I can't remember what the gist of the joke was, but why do I remember that one?
Yeah, and not the others. Yeah, we did a singing telegram to him because he was Russian and didn't really understand a bunch of English, and so it was like, you're gonna think it's crazy, but I think it goes Kasparaitis. You are the best, my love. Go Islanders, go Islanders. For every goal you score, Mother Russia is proud. Amen. I think that was it. That was like 30 something years ago. So yeah, it would be the most random things. And the Scott LeChance thing, we were pretending to be Scott LeChance to try to convince his teammates to go out bar hopping, and knowing that they wouldn't and that he would get in trouble the next day. So I think that was like stupid stuff like that. So, but that was kind of the premise for, not exactly, but that was quasi premise for a lot of the things that we did, like Whitey's World and, filming for different events and interviewing folks and, playing practical jokes, different things like that. But preceding that, and you were reminding me, you talk about it, that we were the predecessor, the original Scary Movie. You want to talk a little bit about that experience that we had?
Go up to this place in the Adirondacks, which we thought was a perfect setting to do like a spoof horror movie. Instead of calling our main character Jason, we called our character Jamal. And we had the hockey mask. Jamal's got the hockey mask on. And we basically incorporate all these relatives of mine and other people on the lake. So like they're in the movie, but like they didn't know they were even being in the movie. We were just like jumping out behind doors and scaring people, or giving like sisters of mine like dialogue to read. The most memorable scene of the movie, I remember. And this is why I'm anxious to get that the tapes back from the place.
But you haven't seen it in a long time, right? So this is all from memory?
Yeah, this is all from memory.
Yeah.
So we'll see how like the reality matches up with my memory. But I specifically remember whoever. We had various people playing Jamal because there were, it wasn't just one person. We had like a young version of Jamal because we had like flashbacks to Jamal's troubled childhood. So in those scenes, we'd find like a 6-year-old cousin of mine or something, and we'd have him put the mask on. But so then there was a scene where motorboating and wakeboarding and water skiing is like a huge thing, and tubing up there. We had, I think it must have been you, man, with the Jamal mask on, like water skiing behind a boat.
I remember only very little. I remember the scenes of that, like, I mean, is a log cabin remote off the lake. And I remember we were like there, like right at the beginning or the end of the season. And like most of the, parts of the house were still covered in drapes and and different covers and everything. And I just remember like just walking around the woods, like filming random stupid stuff. And I can't wait to see the results of it, because hopefully it's as epic, and hopefully it's not one of those that's like 45 minutes long. It really should have been like 3 minutes.
Oh, for sure. So this is an interesting side note story here, but like I think it's definitely worth telling, because when it happened, I immediately thought of you, and when we went and did the Jamal thing. So I've gotten my kids into volunteering throughout the last year. Like every other Friday, we go to this camp here in Charlottesville. It's a camp for kids who have medical issues and things like that. But we help the camp directors, either clean windows, rake leaves, paint walls inside cabins. So the very first time that we ever went and volunteered, this was like back in September, we're washing windows, and this guy just suddenly comes into the middle of the cabin and he says, "Guys, I don't want to alarm you, but just to be aware, there's a horror movie being filmed up the hill." So immediately my kids are like, Dad, you got to get us in the horror movie. I'm like, just finish the volunteering and we'll go see about the movie. So we finish watching Windows. Like an hour later, we go up the hill. Sure enough, it's like a full-scale movie production in the woods. And they're filming outside of a cabin. And they're like, "Oh, we wrapped for the day and everything." And like, "But go talk to the director or whatever." And, so my kids are like, "Dad, go talk to the director. Go talk to the director." So I find the director guy and I'm like, "Hey, my kids really want to be in the movie, but I heard you guys are done for today." And he's like, "Yeah, we wrapped for today, but we really need 2 kids that are your kids' exact ages for a scene we're shooting in 2 weeks." So 2 weeks later, we come back. It was at a different camp. It wasn't at this camp where we were volunteering, but it was like 20 minutes away. We go, and the kids basically were in this scene where they're running frantically out of a cabin with their suitcases, I guess, with a killer or somebody right behind, and getting onto a school bus. And they actually got paid $50 each.
Oh, wow.
And as extras. And this is the funny part, man. So the name of the movie is Bloody Summer Camp 2.
There was a one.
It was only after signing all these waivers and everything that, I won't see you and this and that. And we go home and I'm like, "Oh, let's just see Bloody Summer Camp 1. Sure enough, it's on Prime. You can find this movie on Amazon Prime. I swear, man, we watched 5 minutes of it, and I like told the kids we can't watch any more of this. It was it was graphic. It was like not only the violence, it was sexual. Just weird stuff was going on.
And so you're like, "What did I do?"
Right? Exactly. But like it all goes back to Jamal Returns, man.
Well, I think when Bloody Summer Camp 2
it's coming in 2026, they said.
When it comes out, I think what we should do is record the part of them running out and splice in the Jamal scenes.
Ooh.
And then this is the movie that you were in, kids.
Right? That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I know we said it was Bloody Summer Camp 2, but it was really Jamal Returns.
I'm hoping by 2026 my kids will be older, so maybe I can actually show the real thing, because they'll be like 13 and 11 instead of 11 and 9. So.
I like how you said, hopefully in 2 years they will be older. I'm pretty sure that's the one guarantee.
more mature is what the
Oh,
phrasing that I should have went with there. Yeah,
you're so good with words. Oh man, you know what? I think from this, I think we've come up with a new subversion to Proud Peeps, and I think that we need to start our own collective one where we have guests on talking about their famous encounters. What do you think? You want to do
I'm
that?
in, man. That sounds fantastic.
All right. Well, with that, I think this one we could probably talk for part 3, but with that, we'll leave some for the next podcast that will come out. But man, it was great chatting with you. It was great seeing you. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, man. It feels just like old times.